I'm Paul Moffat.
I'm Jan Moffat.
And this is Clockworks, a Legion podcast without any puns in the introduction ever.
Never?
Never.
Okay, so today's episode is another interview with some of the people involved in making Legion. Paul interviewed 4 of the people involved in the special effects makeup on Legion. These 4 are Todd Masters, Laurie Sandnes, Sarah Pickersgill, and Yukiyo Okajima. It's a fantastic interview. Sadly, I wasn't able to be there for it again because we live in a stupid time zone, so doing any sort of interviews and I have no flexibility in my work schedule.
We're always interviewing people out of LA, and the time difference between us and them is, 5.5 hours. So they're like, could we interview around noon?
Yeah. Sure. Anyway. But it was Paul had a great time. He kept gushing about it for ages afterwards, so I'm really excited to hear what they have to say.
I have one little disclaimer about this interview, which is that we did it over Skype, and the Skype connection was not the best it could have been. There are a few moments where the sound dropped out. I have mostly edited those away, but you may be able to use your keen detective skills to discover some moments where that seems to have happened. But regardless of that, the content of this interview is so interesting, and I am really excited that you get to hear it right away, right now. So without further ado, here we go. I'm very pleased today to have with me some of the artists at MastersFX who did the special effects makeup on Legion. In a second, I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their role. But for now, I just am very pleased to have them here with me. They've agreed to answer some questions about the special effects makeup on Legion. So we're very pleased to have you all with us today. So can we do what I just said? Would you mind each introducing yourselves and just a little bit of what your role on the team is?
Sure, absolutely. This is Todd Masters. I'm the president of the MastersFX and usually act as kind of prosthetic effects producer or sometimes supervisor. Laurie, go.
I'm Laurie Sandnes, and I'm also a makeup effects artist here, but I did coordinating for Legion as well as on-set makeup effects.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Sarah Pickersgill. I'm a makeup effects artist here, and I did the final design for the Yellow-Eyed Devil and also on-set application.
Hello, my name is Yukiyo. Hi, I work in the shop.
She's an amazing makeup artist.
So the first question I always ask, do you watch TV that you're involved in making? So do you, specifically, do you watch Legion? But in general, having worked on a project, do you then sit down and watch the thing? Or does it feel to you like I've done my part?
Well, this is Todd. I can only speak for myself. I never watch the stuff we do, actually, because I feel like it's almost like we're still sort of undressed, and I kind of want to get I want to get away from it a little bit and kind of see it for what it is. And I'm looking behind the scenes always, and I'll watch stuff during production and post production, and occasionally we'll see a premiere or something like that. But I like hiding from it, actually. I like moving on to the next thing.
I think I've read all the scripts for Legion, and I was really looking forward to watching. I haven't watched them yet, but it's something that I do want to watch. I know what happens, so I...
Yeah, I didn't know really much about the comic or graphic novel, and but I became kind of a fan after we did the show. I started watching it, and I really enjoyed it. We don't often... I won't say won't often, but sometimes we don't work on stuff that we actually, would really want to watch after the fact. But I really got into the show, actually, so it was kind of cool.
And so I asked her what's happening.
Exactly. I give her own notes on what happened in the last episode. Yeah.
Well, I think also, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Hello?
I lost the beginning of what you were saying, Todd.
Okay, all right.
Start that again.
Okay, yeah, we're having a couple dropouts here and there on your end. It's probably the Canadian border.
Probably.
So I was just quickly saying, it's with today's social media, it's a lot of fun to kind of watch the show through Twitter, for instance. Right. Like when the episodes air, the Twitter just goes nuts, and I don't need to watch the show because I know the scripts as well, and I can kind of just hear from everybody if it's, working or not.
And it's kind of fun to see what the fans kind of take on certain elements of the show.
And the characters.
And the things that maybe we didn't put as much thought into. And as they've kind of read into, the fans have kind of read into the look of it and whatnot. So it's kind of fun to see that after the fact.
So, how did each of you get into special effects makeup?
Wow, how much time do you got?
I've got as much time as you'll give me.
That's a podcast. We're like a baseball game. We can go forever. I think each one of us have kind of slightly different, but kind of actually very similar paths. We all possess the love of this type of art, and kind of in a weird, sadistic way, kind of like the way it lays out in terms of schedules and the amount of work we have to kind of pump through. It's kind of, at least for me, I grew up doing this stuff as a kid professionally, and kind of started getting into film production pretty early, as well as a bunch of other, different production ideas and challenges. So I kind of naturally grew into it. I don't know. You went to school for it, right?
Well, I went to Vancouver Film School, but I also have an art background. But I always wanted to just make more. I don't know.
Where you must have a different background than me. So
pretty similar. I like movie.
Yeah.
And then I went to school, makeup school, and then just started working, and then just the chance to be in Canada.
Did you make monsters as a kid?
I kind of more like a drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a little
Drawing
sculpting a little bit. Yeah.
And Sarah, you've been here all your life, so.
Exactly. So I didn't exist before this place.
Sarah is one of our longest employees. She actually started, about 300 years ago?
Because they never let me leave.
Yeah, we've actually chained her to her desk.
15 years now? 13.
Oh my goodness. And she's only 20, so.
Wow. Started as a child.
Yeah, I mean, we all love monsters. We have a lot of respect for, the monster makers who have done this before us, and it's kind of a passing of the monster maker torch. These days, practical monster making, is still very often done, but it's maybe not as commonly reported. Maybe more recently, it's getting more commonly reported, but it's not all CG anymore. It's a nice mix between practical and digital these days, and it's kind of fun to kind of be on the front lines of that.
Cool. So can you take us through your involvement in an episode of Legion? And walk me through beginning to end. And I mean, partly going along with this question, maybe, do you think in terms of episodes, or do you think in terms of creatures or specific effects?
Yeah, I think we got most of that. Well, so it starts usually with the concepts of the prosthetic characters, like the devil with yellow eyes, for instance. And so that usually happens in pre-production before we even see scripts. In this case, the devil with yellow eyes was very organic in terms of how it was developed. We all started doing various drawings and ideas to try to kind of flesh out what was inside of Noah's head. And eventually Sarah kind of started dialing into something that he liked in Photoshops. And then we found our actor, Quentin. We did live casts and, into more or less a traditional prosthetic process, sculpt, mold, cast. In this case, it was like fat suits and weird, huge, fat cowls, that kind of stuff. And as the season progressed, there was a few other details we added to the character as it was more unveiled. And there was other makeup effects too. So when you get into the production side of it, they give us a script. We have a bunch of meetings. Usually Laurie's the one leading the charge there. Out of the meetings, we'll try to figure out from the production people how they see the effects that are written in the script, and then it's usually a matter of us trying to decipher what's in the script too. So Legion's a tricky one because they don't really spell it out for you. The scripts they're beautifully written, but it's written more like more almost like the speed of the episode. So there's not a lot of break time to talk about, the objects that are being seen. And so there is a bit of detective work to figure out, what the artists here need to start creating characters or effects, or how we need to work with other departments to create what's needed.
If we talk about the Devil with Yellow Eyes, do you recall your first pitch or understanding of that character? How was it first described to you?
It wasn't. It actually wasn't. And that actually became a bit of a pickle. I don't remember, was it you at the first meetings or us at the first meetings? Yeah.
Yeah, they had this.
Oh, hey.
What was the.
We got pizza. Thank you.
One of the producers had come and said he had this idea of this sad character with this really tiny face inside a big, voluminous cheeks, and he wanted to feel sorry for this character at first, and we thought it was more like pity, but then as it went on, they wanted him to be more kind of evil and sneaky, we found.
Right. Yeah, I think the character definitely evolved over time. I think as they started seeing pictures of what we were working on, and maybe as they were kind of evolving their own script, the character kind of started to evolve before we even went to camera. So it was an interesting process.
We got an image from, what was that movie that they gave? Kung Fu Hustle? There was an image that we were given from some show that just basically showed a very large man's head.
Right.
And that was like kind of the first clue that really sunk in. And we kind of realized that this guy needs to be kind of swollen and bizarre. Mm-hmm. And so we did some swollen, bizarre stuff. And I think, Sarah, you really started kind of getting the real tone of the character. And then just kind of out of coincidence, we found the actor. One of our artists here actually found the actor Quentin at a comic book shop.
It's like a comic book toy, kind of action figure toy store. And yeah, it was like 2 weeks before we even got the script. We even got the show just by coincidence. He went into the store he usually goes into and sees this guy, and he's like 6'10", 6'11", something around
really
there.
tall.
Very tall.
Really tall, really narrow. Yeah.
Very, very slender. And he, he just went up to him and said, "Have you ever thought about doing, creature suit work? Because you're everything that we're always looking for, And, we didn't have anything from him at the time, but he just kind of got his name and number, and then 2 weeks later,
production was looking for an actor, and they didn't know who or where they were going to get somebody, and we said, we have this guy, and they brought him in for a try, and they said, yeah, take him.
He fit the glass slipper.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, he had really no acting experience. And so we didn't know what the performance required, and just kind of pushed him out into the spotlight with this crazy prosthetic on. And, if you look at the Devil with the Yellow Eyes, he's tall and lean in the arms and legs, but then the rest of his body's trashed. And so it would have been tough to do on a large guy like that. We really needed to have the kind of the unencumbered canvas. But we were really looking at him as a physical specimen, and then he actually gets on screen, and it's like, damn, this guy's actually good.
Yeah, it was a huge bonus, because when you meet Quentin, he's not a very, outspoken, outgoing kind of guy. And so we thought, can he really do this? Because he's quiet. He's quiet. He doesn't talk a lot until you get to know him. Right. So we thought, God, is he going to be able to go on a film set with all these people in front of the camera and deliver? And the first time he got in front of the camera, he just took every direction so well, and he came alive in front of the camera.
And he didn't seem nervous at all.
He didn't seem nervous, and it was great.
And now
got through our 4.5 hour makeup application.
Now he's getting other parts. Now he's just like, high in demand.
Yeah, I saw on IMDb he's in The Hammer of the Gods, I think, was his second credit.
Yeah, and I think he's currently doing something else right now.
Right.
So, and just fell into this new career for himself.
Do you know? I think it wasn't until episode 7 or 8, but there's his arms are his arms, correct? So there's scenes with his hands doing with the Devil with Yellow Eyes, his hands doing very unnatural looking things. Is that Quentin's hands? Do you know?
Long fingers?
Yeah.
Well, I think you're talking just because there are episodes where it's funny because Quentin showed us this thing right in the beginning, and he said, I can do this weird stuff with my hands. I got kind of double jointed, and he showed us, and it's like, oh, that's creepy. And so he showed Noah, I think it was, or whoever was directing that particular episode. And yeah, so they had him kind of doing this. I think it was that scene where they've got the map kind of
yes,
thing.
That's
I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that the one you're talking about?
That is the one I'm thinking of.
Fingers and joints. Yeah, exactly. And that was just him. He's like, I've always been able to do this weird thing with my fingers. And I'm like, yeah, that looks creepy. Do it. Yeah, so like I said, it's just just by chance, he just was so perfect for this. Everything that he brought to the table was just exactly what they needed. So it's great.
Yeah, it was kind of fun going into each episode to see what they wanted to Quentin to do each time, and where they were going to take this character.
Yeah.
So, are you responsible for the whole package of the Devil with Yellow Eyes? Or I'm specifically thinking, like, the clothes. Is that you, or is that the costume department doing that?
The suit, the shredded suit that he wears, that's the costume department that takes care of that. And I think we did a rendition of the fat suit early on. And then I think they came up with another one for him to wear.
In the pilot episode, he had his T-shirt.
All right.
And then they changed it.
Yeah.
Okay. How many versions of the Devil with Yellow Eyes were there? And by that I mean specifically what I noticed is the coloring of him changes. Is that achieved by lighting, or did you color him differently for different scenes, episodes, and moments?
Every day of prosthetics is a fresh set of prosthetics.
Okay.
So each one of them is, individually colored. The cowl is quite this large headpiece, and there's facial prosthetics. And the cowl actually has individual hair punched into it. So there is a consistency, but there is also kind of a uniqueness, which, I don't know, you could probably attribute to, the way he's seen each time,
right?
The tone of the character of the scene.
I will admit to this. Me and Harlan McFarlane, which is the other makeup artist that applied the devil every day, we found early on that the paint scheme that we were doing could look a little bit flat under some light, because they, in some scenes, put really, really harsh lighting on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the paint evolved a little bit towards the end of the show, where we put a bit more texture in and a bit more kind of modeling, because we did find that under some of the light, he looked a little bit flat, so we really bumped it up a little bit. So there's a chance that could have come through on the show. And also, I feel like in some scenes where it was kind of like weird, kind of flashy kind of photography, I think VisFX may have filtered. Yeah, done some kind of filters on some of the scenes. So
okay.
Yeah, probably.
There's definitely some moments, especially when he's wearing the suit, that the suit looks almost cartoon, and even his face. And I was just curious about whether that was done in makeup or lighting or VFX, or how that difference. There's definitely, I think it actually is quite effective, but I did notice some difference in how much texture he has, and I attributed it to a difference in how, real he is at that moment.
I think it might be a combination of a lot of things. Like I said, we bumped up the texture a little bit, but I did find in a couple of the episodes I watched, I think they enhanced the lighting or did some kind of filter with VisFX. So I think that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, from the pilot episode, they sent us some clips, and I know they had filtered over him to make him a little darker and creepier.
Right. Were there any particular challenges with the Devil with Yellow Eyes? And I think of this as a two-part question, and I'm interested in hearing about conceptual challenges and practical challenges. Is there anything particular about the concept and imagining the character that was a challenge for you?
Well, any television show, the challenge is always going to be schedule and budget.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of a broken record, I think, but that's kind of, the creative challenge for us is always to try to keep quality up and keep what we want in these things, as specific as we get with prosthetics. We want to kind of get it into the schedule, and it's always a trick to get a production and, the actual fabrication of prosthetics and all to line off an intention. You only get a week, maybe 2 weeks to prepare stuff. And like with the Devil with the Yellow Eyes, I mean, he was not, the initial part of the sculpting and the designing and the creating of the initial pieces. That's several weeks right there, and then it turns into just mass production of making all these cowls and these prosthetic pieces, and they have to be done, very supple, very skin-like. We have some artists here that just do an amazing job, trying to keep up with all the requirements with the time. So it's not uncommon that we're here a lot, and we have split shifts, and we're trying to juggle other productions. It's quite a deal to get everybody to work together on one prosthetic, one character, when so many things are going on at crazy schedules. But for somehow it works. It's kind of amazing to watch.
With the Quentin prosthetics, it takes 4 or 5 days to actually complete one full set for him.
Okay.
That's in casting the rubber, cooking it, then finishing it, seaming it, painting it, then adding the hair. That's not the initial sculpt and mold, which is probably about a month and a half, I bet.
It was, yeah. And then all of the back and forth and the designs and approvals, that kind of eats into your time as well. Slight changes here and there, and I remember lots of late nights sculpting that thing. It was quite I think we were right down to the wire in the end.
I'm sure we were. I don't know too many shows where we're not.
That's true. Yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, our teams are pretty good with the quality of the work, adding kind of all the production speed bumps of schedule changes and notes and all the rest. It's just a real challenge to kind of get it all happening in a level of quality that we like, but it happens.
I mean, I think I hear things like, Quentin was 4 hours in the chair. What does that look like for you? Are you spending 4 hours on him, or are you moving through to different people while he dries, trading off? How does that 4 hours look like from your side?
It goes very quick.
Yeah. It's usually at some crazy hour in the morning, and it's dark and cold. And there's like only 2 people from production there. And there's no coffee yet. There's all sorts of it's almost like, you're asked to do the most specific style of artwork with little brushes around, performers' eyeballs, and they're usually asleep, high specific level of art under kind of the worst conditions. I mean, it's early, it's dark, there's no one there can see anything. So it's always kind of like, working with your hands tied behind your back in some respects. But that's kind of, why we have the best teams, the people that do it. That's kind of what we're made for, like Harlow, for instance. That's his time to shine,
Yeah, Harlow and Sarah, they would be 4 hours of straight, almost touching him the whole time.
Right.
Blow dryers or glue,
yes.
Bathroom break and
burrito break, and away you go.
But it is nonstop touching him.
Yeah, and it's like, he leaves whatever, if it's the 3 hour and 59, minute, he's usually up and out of there for a rehearsal. So you have to be, on point to do this stuff.
Right. How compartmentalized is your work? Do you contribute with each other's work, or are there very clear lines between each person's tasks?
I think as I was saying before, that kind of our odd orchestration of all of us kind of, moving on the same project, but also in other things, really comes from kind of the quality of the people that we have. I mean, we've worked together for a while, a lot of us, and I think we've kind of gone through kind of the bumping in part. Like, Sarah and I used to apply. She was like the perfect size, like she was a little lower than I, so we could kind of work together. And that's kind of a ridiculous example, but in a lot of ways, because we've kind of got this shorthand with each other, we know where everybody's powers are. And in some cases, some of the artists do so many different aspects of it. It's not just like we have an artist that sculpts.
Right.
In some cases, there are people that are heavier on their sculpt than other stuff. But like, Yukiyo, for instance, does everything from computer graphics to making the world's greatest severed heads to
eyebrows,
to making like some of the greatest hair work. And she's got so many very specific quality talents that we look to her to kind of back us up on a lot of stuff. Because, when we don't have time, we'll look to another team member to kind of pick up the ball. Or if we run out of energy is another problem, because Sarah will jam on a sculpture and she'll like bang it out, even over a series of days. But then you're kind of done with it. You sort of kind of need to like get it onto molds. And we have a great team here that we can trust isn't going to F it up and is going to do the best mold out of the best stuff, just because we've been kind of working on it for a while. And it's kind of how it happens. It is organic, but it's also from, a series of really quality people that have, done it enough that we have a pipeline established. None of that was recorded.
So the Devil with Yellow Eyes is the most obvious special effects makeup on Legion, but I understand you also did the bruising makeup for 2 Carries. Amber Midthunder, female Carrie, is bruised and beaten, and then Bill Irwin's male Carrie absorbs her and takes on that bruising. Did you do the bruising for both of those actors?
Yep. Small prosthetics. We sculpted some small swollen eyebrow or eye and cheek and lip prosthetics that had to heal slowly over the course of every time he wore it. But yeah, that makeup was applied mostly like on a kid as well as these small prosthetics, but several days in a row.
Right. Is it a challenge to like match the damage on 2 different actors?
Yeah, we usually like to have the same artist who does it once with that style to also apply on the other artist or other actor. But it's also hard to have this availability, because since we're on so many different shows, we have a few people that aren't available for all day. It's good that we can have an artist that we know can match what someone else has done as well.
And what do you think about when you're creating the effect of, physical damage? Are there pitfalls to avoid? Are there
what do you think about?
I mean, like
real reference, so we don't.
We smack each other around.
I suppose what I'm asking maybe for this and for in general, like how do you decide that you've done a good job? And by which I mean, like, what specifically are you looking at to say, yes, this is great, or no, we need to keep going or approach this differently? What are you looking for to say, yes, that's perfect now?
Well, for the burn, our interrogator burn, when Yukiyo sculpted, or she designed the burn makeup, and when we sent it in, they're like, "Oh, that's disgusting." So we knew that was good.
Yeah, so we usually try to tempt things through with like Photoshops or some sort of visual that we could bring to a meeting or get over to the eyeballs, that are approving this stuff. And we like them to kind of chime in that way. And, if they don't have anything to say, we continue forward and, make it as gross as we know to make it. I mean, that's kind of the reason we get hired. They like the work we've done, and so they kind of want our eyeballs to really be one of the members of the team to approve the creative. So, that's hopefully kind of, what it's about. And if they don't like it, you usually don't do the show.
Right. I mean, in the same kind of vein, when you see makeup as a professional, is there things that maybe you think layman wouldn't notice, but to you is like, oh, that was done really well? When you see either your own or someone else's work, are there things that you look for that are markers for you of this is done really well?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I sort of meant, is that we've done this for so long that we've established a visual language of what works and what doesn't work. And that's sort of how you kind of push into the void of design. To work in design that's never hopefully been out there, you have to have a certain visual rule book to know what works and what doesn't work, the levels of quality, the levels that you can get away with even. And so, yeah, it drives us crazy when we see something. I'm one of those people that if I'm talking to someone in a conversation and they have a booger, I'm going to say, hey, you got a booger. I'm just that kind of person, right? It just drives me. And by the way, you have booger. Kidding. It's just a visual thing that I've always had. That there's certain acceptable things on film and television. Like you don't put boogers on television, right? Unless it's really needed. But there's certain, there's that grows from there on. There's certain ways to design characters and images of film and entertainment that are on an acceptable basis, and others that are on a kind of a frustrating basis. And so we use a high level of those skills to kind of design this stuff. And yeah, when we see makeups that aren't working, or maybe designed in a way that is aggressively designed but ultimately is stupid, yeah, it bugs the shit out of me.
I think as viewers we're harsher critics than the layman would be, but I think in the back of our minds we all kind of know what goes on behind the scenes, so sometimes we can forgive things because we know that sometimes we have to do things that production may want, and we may necessarily not think it's the right direction, but you have to make the client happy. So I think we kind of keep that in mind when we see other work and critique accordingly.
You mentioned the scar makeup on Hamish Linklater's Interrogator. I remember watching the 8th episode of Legion with that scar makeup and being really impressed by it. In fact, I think I said to my wife, Jan, who's my co-host usually on this show, but her schedule is not as flexible as mine, so unfortunately she couldn't be here today. But I think I remember saying on this very podcast that I thought that looked better than the Two-Face makeup on The Dark Knight Rises, which is the obvious comparison. So how did you approach that scar makeup? You started to answer a little bit, but can you tell me about doing that scar makeup on Hamish Linklater?
Yukiyo was the one that designed this makeup, and we asked her to find some good burn makeup. They didn't want to give like half face, so Yukiyo referenced a whole bunch of scars. And how did you go from there, Yukiyo?
We did a Photoshop.
I did Photoshop and use a real reference and use the spot thing.
And we had her Photoshop approved, and they liked what she'd done with it so much that they wanted to do it on the whole rest of his body at one point as well.
Right.
And I think the whole half, he is obviously more burned on one half than the other, but I think initially they didn't want you to see from one angle that he was as burned as he was. So
yeah, more of a reveal.
Yeah, there was more of a reveal. I think that kind of was where that whole one half being more, I don't think it was necessarily a design choice, but it was more that it needed that reveal when he turned around kind of thing.
I actually never thought of the Dark Knight reference at all. You didn't either? Yeah, so that's, sometimes, the 50-50 makeup is what you get when directors need the reveal. So I think that was kind of almost, maybe designed subconsciously.
Right. Is there anything about the work you do that you think people maybe don't know or don't understand that you'd like them to?
Time?
Yeah, we actually don't want them to know anything about what we do.
All right.
Yeah, I think, this day and age, a lot of people, the people that are not so familiar with makeup effects and, film effects, I think a lot of quote unquote normal people think a lot of the stuff is CG, it is computer graphics. I hear that a lot, and they don't realize how much work goes into us trying to make things almost look to a level of CG. I once had a producer compliment us by saying, "Wow, it looks great. It looks CG." I thought that was really interesting. That was fringe, in fact. But it's there's a lot of efforts that we all do internally to think about these things on a level that's actually kind of oddly very specific to the work. Like, for instance, I don't think many of us knew what we were doing when we were doing The Devil with Yellow Eyes. I mean, we were actually on a show called Clubhouse, not Legion.
Right.
And I think we had some suspicions. I'm not a big comic book fan, but I talked to some friends of mine that are really into it, and they started informing me on sort of what we were doing, and then Quentin starts informing us. And so it's almost like, we were so focused on getting the physical art made that we sort of didn't know what the hell we were doing. So it wasn't until later, it was like, oh, we're doing what? So I think it was right around the same time we learned that Blair Witch was Blair Witch. It was kind of I think it was Comic-Con last year that we started hearing all these rumbles about, the real name of the show and what we were really doing on Legion as well as Blair Witch. And I think there was even one other that kind of hid the identity from us, so it kept in secrecy. But, that I thought was kind of the oddest thing about this project. It was really that.
That you didn't know what it was?
Well, going back to that whole kind of time issue, I think, shows like Face Off and, and movies in the past like Mrs. Doubtfire and that kind of thing, I think the general public doesn't really have a good idea of what goes into it, how long it takes us to do and what how long the process is.
Yeah. And how many people are involved.
And how many people are involved behind the scenes. And I think...
When we go to ask for like rap gifts or invites to the rap party, they usually only think there's 2 people. Sometimes like 30. So we all have to kind of slice up these invites and rap swag so everybody gets a piece. But it's kind of amusing. I mean, they only see a few of us go to set, right. So I can understand part of it.
So for The Devil with Yellow Eyes, for example, how long? I asked this and you gave details, but like for a straight number, how long from very beginning till wipe your hands, I'm not working, I'm done with The Devil with Yellow Eyes? How long is that for you?
Still working on it.
Still working on it?
Do you mean like pre-production?
Like making pre-production from like, I want you to work on this show that is called Clubhouse, all the way to, well, The Devil with Yellow Eyes is done from my perspective.
I think it's about over 2 months.
Yeah, I think from beginning meetings to say when we had the first day of shooting, I think it was probably about 5 weeks, right? Yeah. Something like that. And then this show shot we shot a pilot, and then there was a big hiatus, and then we shot all the episodes before they even aired. So, I mean, it was a long process.
But from the original design, Sarah did the concept, and there were several drawings going on, and then that went on for about a week, and then it was a couple of weeks of sculpting, and then days of molding, and then running the pieces, and then fixing them, and then pre-painting them, and the individual hair takes a whole nother day just to put the hairs in individually, and then on set, you take a piece of the set, and then it's another bit. Last 4.5 hours of the application and then the approval.
Yeah, I mean, and then, there was, months and months and months worth of shooting. So it's felt like it's been a long time actually on this show. Especially seeing as there was a big gap between shooting the pilot and then shooting all the episodes.
Right.
So it kind of it didn't actually feel a lot longer than a lot of other shows. It felt like it went on a lot longer. But it was good because we enjoyed the show, so it wasn't such a chore.
And then the character got a lot of play. Sometimes we do a design for a character, and he's seen on camera for seconds or minutes. But our Devil, he's in a lot of play, which is nice to see.
And you also said more people work on it than people expect. How many? If you give a generous, that is, anyone who worked on it at all, how many people were involved in The Devil with Yellow Eyes among you? 10, 15 maybe, depending on who's available to do which part and which day. And because each piece that gets rerun, we have a different crew that needs to put the time in. Right. So yeah, there was probably at least 10 people that all touched it at one point, at least. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully. All right. Yeah, more. Well, and finally, I think we're running a little longer than the half hour I said this would be, but before I let you go, finally, where can our listeners look forward to seeing your work next?
Oh, God. Well, let's see. We just finished a project we're not supposed to talk about, but the first one came out 30 years ago Monday, so that kind of ate up a bunch of our early part of this year.
Magicians TV show is coming back?
Yeah, Magicians is just gearing up for season 3, I guess. Zoo. There you go. Zoo's probably the next one. So Zoo comes out later June. That's on CBS. And so that comes out the 29th of June. So I don't know if you know that show, but it's kind of Walking Dead with animals. Animals have taken over the earth, and they're all badasses and all that.
Lemoncello is
Lemoncello
coming this week.
That's right. Lemoncello on Nickelodeon?
Yeah, Lemoncello's Library.
Lemoncello's Library. Another kid thing called Aliens Ate My Homework, which I think is probably fall. I don't know. We're all over the place. Let me see. What else have we got? We got a couple things coming up in the summer. We got the Slither DVD coming out on July 25th. We got the Belko Experiment Blu-ray coming out. Whoa. On the 27th of June. Boy. Sorry, you caught me a little off guard. I was just checking here.
Busy people.
There's a couple. Yeah, exactly. Look at the resume. Looking at our calendar here. I think that's probably the big ones for right now. But I'm sure there'll be more.
All right. Well, thank you. It sounds like you're very busy, so makes me even more grateful that you gave us this time. I really appreciate it, and this has been a really interesting conversation, so thank you so much for it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
See you later.
And that was our interview with the good people at MastersFX.
That was really cool. It was really interesting to hear about how they make the makeup and how many people are involved in it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was really interesting to hear about, how, 10, 15 people involved in making one piece, and the amount of hands-on, and it makes sense when they say it, but you don't necessarily think how many people are involved in making one bit of makeup or one monster or one...
And that they don't reuse.
Yeah.
That they make new pieces every time is amazing to me. Like, it's such a cool art. It's such an interesting... I can't imagine how you get into it, and I would love to, be a fly on the wall in a studio like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And they did such a great job. The Devil with the Yellow Eyes is an amazing character and is such a unique, and it's so great for them too that it gets to be on screen for so long. This thing they created.
Yeah, I think it was can't remember somebody said that often their creations are on screen for just a second, but it must be so satisfying that The Devil with Yellow Eyes was on screen for such a long time.
Yeah, in so many episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was great.
Yeah.
So this is now, we're going to say it again, officially as our last episode of, we don't have any more interviews in the docket, so this is our last episode for this season. We'll see you next time next time Legion starts airing.
Yeah, so this makes, this is our 16th episode of Clockworks, and there were 8 episodes of Legion, so we have officially twice as many episodes as the show we're talking about.
Fantastic. We could go on for so much longer, but we won't. We'll spare you that.
We could. When we were talking about wrap-up episodes, we had many more directions to take a wrap-up episode, but, that was just a wrap-up of the season. Maybe we'll save some of those discussion points for wrapping up Season 2, Season 3.
Onwards.
And onwards.
Where can you find us?
You can find us on Twitter at ClockworksCast. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this interview, about our other interviews. If you're, have listened through Clockworks and not commented in the past, we would love to hear your thoughts and comments about old episodes as well, not just this most recent one. You can send us an email at clockworkscast@gmail.com, and we'd also love to hear from you there. If you like this podcast, you can rate or review us on, I think they've changed, I think it's not iTunes anymore, it's Apple Podcasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, there you go.
So review us on there.
Also, if you're interested in our new podcast that'll be coming out since we're done with Clockworks for a while, we have WTS Cast on Twitter, and that's Way Too Seriously, our podcast about kids' movies.
So Way Too Seriously, we will talk for about half an hour. It'll be a little shorter than this show. Yeah. Talking about some of the issues in kids' movies, one movie per episode. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/clockworkscast. We have our first Patreon goal is a very humble $10 a month, and if we reach that, we've pledged that we will buy microphones.
Improve our sound quality.
Those microphones will cost more than $10, but it's an excuse for us to buy something we really want to buy. The sound quality will get so much better. We're so close to reaching it. You could be the one. You, right now, could be the one who makes it so that we have microphones and for...
Stop sounding desperate.
For the rest of our entire podcast career, the sound will be so much better, and that's exciting.
All right, are we done with this?
We'll pass the savings on to you.
All right, enough desperation. It's time to go.
Okay.
Goodbye.
You stole my line.